when you take a look at their roster and what's happened in the offseason to date, I actually think it's pretty obvious that they have one big question mark, and that's at right tackle. I don't want to hear anybody say, "Oh, Lucas Niang this," or they don't. They're not going to trust him. They don't know it. They don't know if he could even play a full season. So that's just I'm sure they'd want him to compete with maybe somebody they draft early. So I think right tackle's a spot because the rest of the line, Juwan Taylor now is going to. Now I don't know. Do you think that? Did Juwan Taylor, and I don't know, I didn't find this out, but I don't know if Juwan Taylor signed with Kansas City and it was like, yes, we're going to play you at left tackle, or, hey, I'm just signing with you. I'll play left tackle or right tackle. I prefer to play left because because Kansas City could decide either way. I mean, who knows? Maybe Taylor moves to right tackle and they draft somebody that they plan on moving to left tackle either this year or next year.
Yeah, I think the plan's left tackle. They kind of made a similar gamble with Brown when they traded for him from Baltimore, who was a right tackle, who was very vocal about saying, hey, I need to play on the left side. That's where my maximum value is. A lot of us, myself included, questioned the move on putting him on the left side, and it worked out for him. I think we're going to see the same move. It's like, a little bit of a question mark on Juwan Taylor moving to the left side, but you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt here, knowing that, hey, this worked with Brown already. We're confident we can make it work with Taylor. I think the question that, do we also give them the benefit of the doubt of going into draft weekend and finding a rookie that is probably going to be definitely will be on the back half of the first round. So you're not getting one of the top guys or even someone day two that can do what Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith did, come in as rookies and play at a very high level.
Yeah.
Now, Trey Smith situation was a little different. His was more medically based. The reason why they got him in round 6 in 2021, he had a heart condition, if you remember back. But as a football player, all the scouts had him as a first or second round pick. But the medicals bumped him down, and it's worked out for them. They struck gold there. Don't forget about Darian Kennard, who they drafted last year in the 5th round, tackle at Kentucky. Some say he's going to be projected to play the guard. I think he's going to be competing for that right tackle spot with Niang. But you get in a rookie, Kansas City, if they're confident that they can find another guy in the draft, day 2, to come in and play right tackle, this offense won't skip a beat.
Also on offense, the wide receiver position, look, it's completely different pretty much. But you are at least getting guys that contributed, especially Tony, who contributed late. So, hey, you've got your Hill. Tony's basically going to fill the Hill role, and that's that's what you're hoping because he has those types of that type of ability. Sky Moore, okay, he didn't look all that great, but he's a rookie, so you're going to give him a pass. But if you're going to look at it as, all right, well, all this stuff could be good, but you can't look at it that way as a general manager. You got to look at it the opposite. Like, what if everything goes wrong? And you know what Valdes-Scantling is. He just is what he is. But you really can't go into this season, I believe, on just trusting that Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney are going to do what the previous receivers have done here the last several years. You just can't. So I don't know what type of player, but maybe even the type. I think the perfect fit if he were available. I think this would scare the living daylights out of everybody if he got chosen here. Would be Hyatt.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
So if you put Hyatt there, and he could be available when the Chiefs pick, that could be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of their top 3 pass catchers at wide receiver are gone. Cole Hardman and Juju, right? So you're putting a lot of this on Tony and Sky Moore, and you can't tell me there's a strong reason why you believe in them other than they're talented, right? Tony's been in the league a couple years right now. He's spent more time on the sideline than on the field. Sky Moore, as much as I did like him coming out of college, I think he's a great slot prospect. He hasn't proven it yet. So like you said, the decision here as a general manager is you need to hedge. In case one of these does not work out, what is your plan? And if there's an offense in football that you're confident can make something work with a part-time player that you draft in round 1 and say, hey, we're not going to count on you to play 75% of the snaps. Jalen Hyatt is a great fit. And I'll tell you what, this is the kind of offense that I could see a Jordan Addison going into and excelling right away. Right. I mean, we've seen his stock drop a little bit. I mean, I've always had kind of like a round 2, late round 1 grade on him.
Yeah. Why is that? Because when after the Biletnikoff year, I mean, sky was the limit. I mean, he was the man. So what's changed?
A couple of things. One, he got a little banged up. 2, went to a new offense, and even though the offense was, superstar everywhere, right, at quarterback, the head coach, the support cast, it was a new offense for him, and so you just didn't see the production that we saw at Pittsburgh. You didn't see the playmaking ability that we saw at Pittsburgh. You saw flashes of it, like his Oregon State tape this year was one of the best wide receiver tapes you see out of all these receivers. It just wasn't consistent. And there's a few reasons behind that. I think scheme, injury, but also what bumped him down a little bit was this pre-draft process has not been very friendly to him. He didn't work out well. He didn't run well. He didn't measure well. I mean, all of these things that you were thinking you were going to see in workouts that would kind of validate in some his first round status, they never came up.
Well, does he necessarily, though, does he have to be a workout warrior? Because we know certain wide receivers don't.
No, they don't. And that's why I still think, like, you get him in the right system,
he drops, but that doesn't mean his projection should drop at all.
Right. You're right. Yeah, I'll tell you what this is what I'll say about Addison, the last thing. If he goes to a Kansas City, he's going to be a star. And you can say that about a lot of receivers, right? You can say that about Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, who I feel very similar about. Those guys are right next to each other on my wide receiver stack. But if Addison were going to an offense, I don't want to piss off any fan bases out there, but an offense that doesn't have a good system in place, a good passer in place, he's the guy that just disappears. He doesn't create much on his own. He needs a system, but if he's in the system, he can maximize better than others can, if that makes sense.
Okay. How about Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh would be a good spot.
You know what I'm saying?
Reunite with Kenny Pickett.
That would be.
He is. Yeah. My comp for Addison is Deontay Johnson, which is ironic that you said.
Oh, really?
I think he's that kind of receiver, that slot/outside, move him around, not very big, but quick enough, fast enough, and just understands how to get open. That was the one thing that jumped off his tape both years, Pittsburgh and USC. He understands how to get open. He's just the one thing that the knock I have against him, he's not a very big guy. And he doesn't play big at all.
Yeah.
And that's an issue at the next level.
Okay, so how about this? Travis Kelce's getting older.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. I can get my hands on Dalton Kincaid, or I can get my hands in one of these tight ends. And
Luke
that
Musgrave
would not be a shock to see that happen either.
I mean, I've had people tell me Luke Musgrave physically is the Kelce reincarnated.
Okay.
He is the younger version of Travis Kelce. Okay. And that matches up exactly with where I had Musgrave graded. I would love to see what Kelce's reaction to that would be. Does that mean that the end is near there?
But didn't he have to come out somewhere and say that he was coming back? I mean, I think somebody might have asked him that question, so he has to know he has to be realistic.
Right.
I mean, if somebody's going to ask you that question and you're going to respond to it, you can't be like, why are you drafting a tight end then? I mean, I don't think that's,
And if there's an offensive mind out there that can make it work with two of these guys, it's Andy Reid.
That's true.
He can get both these guys on the field.
Yeah.
So hey, that would be like you said earlier, that would be a move just like Hyatt that would scare the crap out of you because the Chiefs can get the most out of these guys.
Yeah, that's why even though I think right tackle might be more important, I think that what's more scarier, which fits to Andy Reid, the crazy, I'm gonna come up with all sorts of ways to put points on the board. And I just thinking about, wow, I can get either this or that. And all I have to do is pick one,
Yep.
So I think it's going to be awfully tempting. And I could definitely see that's the way that they're going to go. As far as the defensive side of the ball, I would say that their biggest need would be at edge, and up front, the defensive line, because, look, Charles Omenihu is not anything more than a pass rush kind of specialist guy. Matter of fact, I think Mike Dana is probably Charles Omenihu. So I think that they're just rotation guys. I still think they need another guy to work on with Karlaftis for the next 5 years. They need that guy opposite Karlaftis. And they could also use an upgrade in the interior as well. Natty is just a body. Jones, I'm sure, would like to have somebody that could play alongside him and has a little bit more talent. So I would say the defensive line might be their biggest need, with the edge definitely being the spot that I can see them look at early on.
Yeah, I had DL Edge as, I just kind of meshed them two together. I know they're two different spots on the R-Lads team reports. And I just have DL Edge as the next spot after receiver tackle as well. I personally like Omenihu. I do think that he's a drop-off from Frank Clark. So I do think they went backwards there. And I do think no matter what, you're going to need to add some depth. I think Dan is coming up on a contract year, if I have that right. I think the loss of Kalen Saunders, even though he was not a starter, I do think, other than Jones, he was their best interior pass rusher. And I think for you to get another all-pro caliber season out of Chris Jones, even though the guy is dominant by himself, to maximize him, I think you'd want another interior pass rusher. So if there's a move on defense that I could see them using an early pick on, I think they would err towards the interior before adding another edge piece.
Also, you had really a great job in the last offseason, when Veach, he had to replace a lot in the secondary, and he did a good job of that. He went into the draft, and really it was part of the reason that they won a Super Bowl. Right. Is the fact that he was able to get a 7th round draft pick like Jalen Watson to perform. Not like, Sauce Gardner, but just, hey, you know what? He's holding his own. Didn't expect him to hold his own. So I think they did a really good job. Now you add in Mike Edwards this offseason to go along with some of the kids that they added last. Look, we haven't even heard the most of Brian Cook. He still has hopefully a really good career. Joshua Williams, and then of course the first round draft pick has a really good career as well. And I think L'Jarius Sneed, I've always liked Sneed, and he's finally putting it all together as a legitimate number 1 corner. So you know what? I don't really think they have a whole lot to do now in this secondary.
Completely agree. I mean, the secondary, what they've done in the draft through the secondary and even the offensive line, I mean, I know we could point to Mahomes, Kelsey, and Reed as the reason why they're winning Super Bowls right now, but I think there is not a team that has drafted better than these guys. That you look at what they did in the secondary. I mean, even me last year, I said that was the number 1 concern. I was like, are you really going to rely on McDuffie and Williams and Jalen Watson? And look, they made plays
all season.
Yeah, and Isaiah Pacheco at running back. I mean, this team, what they did on the offensive line with Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey. I mean, these guys have drafted as well as any organization in football, and it just kind of gives credence to the statement that if you want sustained winning in football, it's not just the quarterback, it's the draft year after year after year.
And what you have to, and two, is, and you get it, Mahomes is going to get the credit, and Eddie Reed's going to get the credit, and maybe now even Veach will get the credit. But you also have to give a lot of credit because he's won 2 Super Bowls now. And that's here, and he's got 3 Super Bowl rings, and that's Steve Spagnuolo. Yeah. He has done a very good job because he didn't have a whole lot of talent on defense. It's Chris Jones. And a couple of pieces, but you got to look at him and the job he's done. Veach gets the guys, but those guys are the guys that are coaching them. And then also Dave Taub is a special teams coach. We know how good he is. So it takes the whole unit when you have a good general manager and he gives you the players, but the coaching staff has done a tremendous job coaching these guys. And I just don't think that, like a Steve Spagnuolo gets as much credit as he should. And by the way, speaking of special teams, I don't know what's going on with Tommy Townsend. He looks to be one of the better punters in the league, and yet there seems to be like something going on there. Like they lowballed him on the Why would here's the you lowballed him, and yet for some reason it's April the 6th and nobody's giving him a contract? Why isn't anybody offering a contract to Tommy Townsend?
It could be a positional value thing, I mean, there's got to be some sort of economic reason behind it. There's no denying that he's a good punter. I mean, you can't argue against it, but
but they don't seem like they care if they lose him.
Yeah,
they're not going to get anything in return. This
Yeah,
is just okay.
Could,
If we lose him, we lose him. And so why would an opposing team needing a punter? Oh, we'll give you. But maybe Townsend's looking for, and we'll wait on more. We'll wait on more. So maybe they're waiting for a specific deal to come in. But
yeah.
I can't imagine he's going to be there.
Yeah, I think that the Kansas City, their stance on it at least is this is partially what happens to your roster when you have to start paying your quarterback 40, 50 mil a year. This is when you start to see the Mahomes contract eat up 25% of the cap. So, in the past, it hasn't been that way. So there's just little things that, I think positional value is huge with a lot of these, the way of the NFL front offices now. It's less about football, more about algorithms and economics. And you see guys from Wall Street coming in and taking over football teams, right? It might be less about the football to some. Whether you agree with it or not is not the discussion. That's the truth, that a lot of teams, they might just have a very objective value on a punter and they won't go above it.
Yeah, I guess if you don't punt a whole lot either,
that's true.
You don't really worry about it. But I think another team eventually is going to say, hey, we need a punter and we only have to give this guy, I don't know, a few $1,000,000 a year. We could afford that. So, all right. Because look, you say what you want. You said it.
One second. All right, good.
You were saying yesterday about how important special teams is, and that's the thing. Is if there's got to be bad teams with cap space. Well, this is the perfect guy to get. Put Tommy Townsend on your team.
Great point.
So I don't know. We'll see.